Welcome to Whisperwood Stories. Our first story is from the cheekily named Aaron Rodgers' Butthole. I posted this somewhere else recently, but it fits better here. I used to deliver hotshot freight across the Great Plains/Minnesota area. One night around 2 a.m., I was hauling across North Dakota trying to reach Montana by morning. I was delivering a particularly valuable tractor part that a farm desperately needed for the following day. I began to notice some highway hypnosis sneaking up on me because I'd been through it hundreds of times before. Anyone who has driven across North Dakota knows that it is incredibly flat. Like, really flat. There also tends to be very straight and long roads. It's somewhat easy to see things on the road that are far away, even at night. I noticed something long on the road, spanning my entire lane, approximately half a mile in front of me. I slowed down a little and prepared to move into the opposite lane, thinking it was some retread off of a blown tire. As I got closer, I noticed that it was two people, laying head to toe across the entire lane. I swerved into the other lane, successfully avoiding them, and came to an almost complete stop. But the people on the road didn't move, not an inch. I was just about to back up and check on them when I remembered a story that an old graybeard colleague of mine told me. He told me that in certain remote areas, people will lie down in the middle of the road and wait for a car or truck to stop and see what's going on. The people laying on the road along with whoever else was hiding in the nearby bushes would beat up the driver and steal his vehicle, leaving him in the middle of nowhere. I decided not to back up, and when the two people on the road saw me put the truck back into gear and drive away, they both got up and walked towards the shoulder. I called the police and explained what happened, but we were so far away from civilization that I doubt anything came of it. Thanks to that old graybeard, I got to keep my truck, my job, and my teeth. Our second story is from Pen Bandit. Around 2006, I was driving a flatbed, and I picked up a lot of construction material, drywall, roofing, and so on. I was in rural Tennessee. My memory is foggy now, but I want to say it was between Memphis and Nashville, but closer to the intersection of the Minnesota, Alabama, and Tennessee state lines. I was required to have a tarp that covered my materials, so I strapped everything down, tarped the load, and left. About 5 miles down the road, in the middle of nowhere woods on a 2-lane road, I noticed my tarp flapping in the wind. I found a wide shoulder on the road and pulled over to fix it. I realized that it was just my bad job tarping this load, so I decided to redo it here and now. I undo all the bungee straps, drag the tarps off, roll them back up, then climb onto the load and start unrolling the tarps again. As I was doing this, I saw a guy walking down the same side of the road I'm on, coming towards my truck. I kept my eye on him, because I was in the middle of nowhere, but I continue what I'm doing. About the time I have the tarps set in place and was climbing down, I started hooking the bungee straps back on. The guy is getting close enough for me to pay attention to him now. I grab a winch bar and set it on the trailer where I'm working just in case. It was a 4-foot-long, 8-pound bar of solid metal. Once the guy gets to me, the first thing I notice is his hair. It was like a mullet, but very patchy. The next thing I noticed were his eyes, which I could only describe as off. It was like they were clear. I didn't think he was drunk or high or anything, but it also gave me the distinct impression that the elevator didn't go all the way up. His clothes were dirty and not well maintained. He also had dirty white tennis shoes. I remember them because they didn't have laces on, and the shoe's tongue was noticeably out of place. He stops by me until I acknowledge him and just says, "I've got a long walk." I say, "Yeah, man, you do. We're in the middle of nowhere," making it clear that there was no ride to be had here. He nods, starts walking by me, and continues on his way. He stops at the driver's door of my truck and turns around, comes back to me, then repeats himself, "I've got a long walk." At this point, I explain that I can't give him a ride, insurance and all of that. I apologize for not being able to help him out, and he seems to accept this, then turns around and leaves. I wait for him to get a little ways away from my truck and start working on finishing the tarps. I still keep an eye on him as he's moving away from me. As I'm putting on the last of the bungee straps, I look over to check where he is, and he turned around and was heading back towards me. He was now about 100 yards from the front of my truck and coming back. It looks like he's talking on a cell phone, had his hand up to his face, and I could barely make out his mouth moving. His other hand was waving like he was having a conversation with someone. I finish with the straps, grab my winch bar, and start climbing back up to my truck. He was about 10 yards away when I got inside. As soon as I'm in the cab, I lock the doors and set the winch bar on the passenger seat just in case. I look at the guy and realize he's not talking on the phone. He's just talking to his hand, and now I'm nervous. Because he doesn't look like he's having a nice or pleasant chat. It looks more like an angry conversation. I crank the truck into gear and pull out of the shoulder. I didn't look for traffic or anything. As I passed him, he was just looking at me, still holding his hand to his face with this dead look. Gave me the creeps. About that time, I hit 5th or 6th gear, and when I looked in the mirror, there was no one there. Our next story is from I Collect the Dead. I was driving through eastern Washington on some state roads. There were no rest stops or cities, but I had done the route enough to know that there were these massive dirt areas, approximately every 40 miles, where you could park safely away from the road. I decided to call it a night and closed my blinds and laid down to watch something on my phone. After roughly an hour, I heard someone try to open my driver's side door. I haven't heard any vehicles out on the road the whole time I was parked, but I get up to peek out of the curtains. As I'm looking out into the blackness of the driver's side window, I hear them try to open the passenger side door. I peek down from the top of the curtain but can't see anything, so I start the truck and kick the lights on. I was fairly freaked out at this point, so I still wasn't opening the curtains, but peeking through the gaps instead. Nothing. Nobody was standing near either of my doors or parked within a straight line of me. I took a deep breath and closed the sleeper curtains too, because for some reason that's going to make things better, right? After lying down and convincing myself that something blew against the truck and only sounded like the doors, it was fairly windy after all. I hear what sounds like someone trying to pry open the vents on the sleeper. The door handles start clicking again and the truck starts shifting like someone is climbing onto it. I hit the little alarm button in the sleeper, hoping to spook them off, but it does nothing other than add to the noise of the door handles, fingers tapping on the windows, and the hiss of air coming out of the suspension. Then it all suddenly stops. There were a few moments where all I could hear was my own breathing and heart pounding before I heard another truck approach and drive by. I spent the next few hours waiting for whatever it was to come back, but it never did. In the morning, I couldn't find any footprints or damage to my truck, but on every window there were tiny, human-looking handprints, like a toddler had licked their hand and stuck it on my window over and over. Thank you for listening to Whisper Woods Stories. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe down below. Do you have a story that you'd like me to read here? then send it to whisperwoodsubmissions@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and don't let the shadows get too close.